Hey traders, Raghee here, and in this recap video I'm going to talk to you about why futures index traders have to care about earnings. And this is going to take you into understanding the weighting of these futures index. And if you're looking at ES, YM, and Q, you're talking about keeping an eye on anywhere from 6 to 12 names that are going to have an impact on the value, the price value of that underlying futures index contract. So I'm going to talk about IBM here because there was a lot of talk about what the YM did in response to IBM. Now, IBM has had almost 5 years of bad earnings. This is now just after the 5th year. So 23 out of 24 have been losing earnings calls, and this year was the first one that was a positive. So a lot of people ask, well, why did IBM move down the way it did? So two things. If you're a YM trader, if you're trading the Dow futures, you've got to keep an eye on the names that are going to have an impact on the contract. The easiest way to do it, if you're not keeping a pulse with the market, is take a notepad, go into your notepad and type in all 30 of the Dow symbols. Just type them on in, so you'll start with Boeing, and then you'll go to 3M, etc., right? So add all that and just save that file. Then you're going to go over to the Finviz site. So it's finviz.com. Every Sunday or Monday, I usually do it on a Monday morning, you're going to go into the screener over at Finviz, and you're going to paste those 30 tickers right into this list. So if I copied and pasted that list that I created, I would do this for the S&P, the NASDAQ, and the Dow. So take all 30 of the Dow, take maybe the top 10 or 15 on the SPOOs, take even the top 25 on the SPOOs and on the NAS, and paste them in there. You're going to go over to screen for the earnings. That's all you want to know. When are the earnings coming out? So you'll see over here, the earnings date is going to be this week. I mean, you could do tomorrow as well, but I want you to have more of a heads up. So do an earnings search for this week for those names. Those names, again, specifically heavily weighted into the Dow. The other tool that I will use is Estimize. Now, a buddy of mine started this company some time ago, and it's a very popular tool. It's a unique tool that allows you to have very accurate understandings of what the EPS and revenue is going to be. So you might say, wait a minute, Rog, you tell me I need to look at all these things about stocks? Remember, if you're an index futures trader, you are a stock trader, and you are most especially a stock trader during earnings season. So you're going to go type in IBM, and you're going to take a look at what the history in terms of earnings has been and get an idea of what the earnings per share have been, so you can better gauge the kind of response you're likely to see. Now you'll see the actual is much better than Wall Street consensus or even the Estimized consensus. And then why would IBM sell off? Well, when you take a look at the EPS, everything was in line. In fact, the consensus from Estimized was a little bit higher than Wall Street, and the actual was a little bit lower. This is where understanding where whisper numbers are weighting at will give you an edge as a futures trader. And we'll go through this process in the room. In fact, we do very often with these heavier weighted names. This allows two things. Number one, you're not going to get broadsided by a day where the futures contract might be reacting to something completely unrelated to what might be happening in the broader market. You'll know that it's the tail wagging the dog. Heavily weighted stocks are the tail wagging the dog. And for a lot of you, you realize that this just opens the playground of opportunity up, where you can start to ask yourself, are there trades that I can take on IBM and on the Dow? And quite frankly, I'm actually looking at potentially a buy on IBM here. So this is where, again, if you're a stock trader, does it make sense for you to understand futures? Absolutely. And this is the process that I use every earnings season, okay? It doesn't take a lot of time. It just takes a lot of good habits to go through this process, which takes maybe 2 minutes per name. And you can get a good idea of whether or not it's going to affect the underlying futures contract and whether or not there might be an opportunity to be had into and post earnings. I'll see you in the next update.